The golden question about relate to Alien and Aliens, which one do you prefer?
You know, I've just been really lucky. The guys I've worked with really appreciate strong women, so I just...
In 1979, a small group of filmmakers set out to create a science fiction thriller. But what they unleashed became one of the most disturbing and influential horror films ever made. Alien was not just a movie, it was an experiment in pushing creative limits, psychological boundaries, and physical endurance. Behind the polished surface of its success lies a trail of hidden decisions, uncomfortable truths, and unusual techniques that shaped every frame. Many of these choices were so unconventional that the studio avoided discussing them publicly. This documentary uncovers the strange, unsettling, and rarely revealed facts that shaped the making of Alien, and reveals how far the creators were willing to go to terrify the world. The chestburster scene was filmed without warning the cast. The chestburster scene is one of the most iconic moments in cinema history, but the intensity of the actors' reactions was not accidental. Ridley Scott and the effects team planned the sequence with military secrecy to capture pure, unfiltered horror. The cast received a broad explanation of what would happen, but the filmmakers avoided describing the exact details. They never mentioned the violent spray of blood, the force of the prosthetic explosion, or the unpredictable direction of the splatter. Veronica Cartwright, who played Lambert, was particularly blindsided. During the take, she was struck in the face with real blood and reacted with genuine panic, which was exactly what Scott wanted. The production notes reveal that only John Hurt and a handful of technicians knew the full plan. The rest of the ensemble walked into the scene expecting a mild prosthetic effect, not a chaotic eruption. When the creature burst from Hurt's chest, their screams, recoil, and shock were entirely authentic. The moment was so visceral that Cartwright fainted shortly after the take. The studio later admitted that filming actors under such conditions would be considered unethical today. Yet the realism it produced helped cement Alien as a landmark in horror. The resulting footage remains one of the most raw examples of capturing genuine human fear on camera. They used actual slaughterhouse organs for the gore. To create the disturbing realism that defines Alien, the effects team made a controversial decision. Rather than relying on synthetic materials, they sourced actual animal organs from a slaughterhouse. The fresh organs were placed inside prosthetics and set pieces to enhance the natural textures and movements of living tissue. The choice produced the unsettling authenticity Ridley Scott wanted, but it also created severe discomfort among the cast. During the filming of the chestburster and autopsy scenes, the strong odor of the real organs filled the set. Crew members recalled the smell as overpowering, especially under the intense studio lights. Several actors were unaware that real organs had been inserted until the moment filming began. Sigourney Weaver admitted in interviews that she had no idea the props would look and smell so realistic. Cartwright said the gore made her physically ill. The effects department kept the use of real animal parts quiet at first. They were worried about how audiences, studio executives, and animal rights groups might react. This secrecy extended into the marketing phase, as the studio felt publicizing the detail could spark backlash. Despite the risk, the authenticity contributed heavily to the tactile, organic look of the alien world. Today, the decision is remembered as one of the boldest and most questionable choices in practical effects history. It set a precedent for using raw biological materials to achieve cinematic realism in horror. A real-life serial killer inspired Ash's malfunctioning scene. The malfunctioning android scene featuring Ash is one of the most disturbing moments in Alien. What many do not know is that the sequence was influenced by forensic footage of real criminal cases. According to interviews with the production team, Ridley Scott studied medical reports that examined unusual muscular spasms and erratic body movements recorded during certain violent criminal incidents. These unsettling references informed the twitching, jerking, and disjointed motions that Ash performs as he breaks down. Ian Holm, who portrayed Ash, crafted his performance to mimic these real forensic descriptions. He incorporated unnatural breathing patterns, delayed blinking, and sudden convulsions. Scott encouraged Holm to behave as though his body was shutting down in chaotic waves, similar to the involuntary movements described in the case studies. While the exact sources were not openly cited by the studio, multiple crew members confirmed that the inspiration came from documented autopsy and police records involving serial offenders. The decision to use this material was not publicized because of how controversial it would have been. The studio wanted to avoid associations between the film and real violent crimes. In addition, referencing forensic materials without proper attribution could have raised legal concerns. The result was a scene that felt disturbingly real, grounded in a physicality audiences could not quite explain. This realism helped make Ash's death one of the most unsettling sequences in the film. It blurred the line between science fiction and human violence in a way the producers preferred to keep quiet. The xenomorph's drool came from a secret ingredient. The alien's drool is an iconic part of the xenomorph's appearance, but its source was far stranger than viewers realized. The thick, sticky saliva was created using a commercial lubricant known as KY jelly. The production team discovered that this substance created the perfect consistency for the creature's dripping mandibles. It clung to the suit, stretched into long strands, and glistened under the lights in a way no ordinary prop material could replicate. The use of the lubricant was initially kept quiet because the studio considered it embarrassing to reveal that a personal care product formed such a key part of the creature's appearance. Special effects artist Roger Dickon later confirmed that they experimented with several substances before settling on KY jelly due to its thickness and durability on camera. This unusual choice added a disturbing biological quality to the alien. The drool behaved unpredictably, running down the elongated head and dripping onto the actors in slow, unsettling trails. Balaji Badejo, the man inside the alien suit, recalled the material being applied repeatedly during filming. The effects team had to recoat the suit constantly to maintain the glossy, wet appearance that defined the creature's terrifying look. While the studio initially preferred to avoid discussing the exact ingredients behind the alien's slime, the detail eventually emerged through interviews with the special effects department. Today, it is recognized as one of the clever low-budget tricks that helped Alien achieve its raw, organic style. H.R. Giger's original Alien concept was considered too sexual. H.R. Giger's original designs for the alien were even more provocative than what appeared in the finished film. When Giger first presented his artwork to the studio, several executives reacted with discomfort. The sketches contained strong imagery, including forms based on human reproductive anatomy. Giger's biomechanical aesthetic blurred the boundaries between machines and organic bodies, and this fusion created designs that many studio leaders considered inappropriate for a mainstream science fiction movie. Ridley Scott defended Giger's work, arguing that the disturbing sensuality of the creature was essential to the horror. However, certain details were deemed too extreme and were removed or toned down. Early versions of the alien's head and body featured far more explicit anatomical shapes. The studio felt that these elements would distract audiences or provoke unnecessary controversy. They also feared censorship issues in international markets. Giger eventually modified his designs, but he insisted on preserving the disturbing psychological themes at the core of his vision. The final version of the alien still carries subtle traces of the original motifs, but the most confronting aspects were intentionally hidden. These changes were never widely publicized, as the studio did not want discussions about the film to center on controversy rather than horror and suspense. Despite the censorship, Giger's influence shaped the entire visual identity of Alien. His unsettling combination of beauty and terror elevated the film and helped define a new era of creature design. A crew revolt nearly shut down Giger's art department. H.R. Giger's workspace during Alien became one of the most intense and uncomfortable environments in the entire production. His art department was filled with dark airbrushed paintings, organic sculptures, and skeletal forms inspired by biomechanics and nightmarish dream imagery. Several crew members found the atmosphere disturbing, but the real tension came from the relentless pace and the emotional pressure of the work. Giger often demanded incredibly long hours to refine details on the alien suits, eggs, and derelict ship interiors. The airbrush chemicals, paint fumes, and dim lighting added to the strain. Interviews with crew later revealed that some workers felt physically and mentally overwhelmed. A handful of them walked off the job temporarily, complaining that the conditions were unbearable. At one point, production managers considered reorganizing the entire department to prevent a full strike. Ridley Scott intervened, knowing that Giger's output was central to the film. He allowed Geiger more autonomy and brought in additional workers to relieve the stress. The team finished the biomechanical elements on time, but the revolt remained one of the most quietly handled crises of the shoot. The studio avoided publicizing the incident because it reflected poorly on workplace safety and morale. Despite the turmoil, the results became legendary. The tortured beauty of Geiger's designs shaped the entire mood of Alien, turning the production chaos into cinematic history. Ridley Scott secretly replaced the original cinematographer. During the early weeks of filming Alien, creative tensions escalated behind the scenes. The original cinematographer, Derek Van Lint, was known for his expertise with commercials, but differences emerged between his approach and Ridley Scott's vision for a shadow-heavy, atmospheric horror film. Scott wanted deeper contrast, slower lighting buildups, and a more experimental look. Van Lint preferred cleaner, more traditional cinematography. According to crew interviews, Scott quietly took more control of camera placement, lens selection, and lighting decisions. Although Van Lint remained credited and involved, Scott effectively stepped in to oversee the cinematographic style himself. This internal shift was kept low profile to avoid studio questions or union complications. The producers did not want rumors of department conflict to reach executives who were already nervous about the film's unusual tone. The change created a more unified visual style. Scott's fascination with chiaroscuro lighting, industrial textures, and narrow beams of illumination transformed the Nostromo into a claustrophobic labyrinth. Van Lint's team executed the technical demands, but the guiding hand behind the final aesthetic was largely Scott's. This quiet takeover influenced the franchise for decades. The moody lighting, diffused smoke, and oppressive shadows became defining trademarks of the Alien universe. The studio never addressed the shift publicly, preferring the illusion of a smooth collaboration. The Dallas death scene was so horrific, it was cut down. One of the most frightening sequences ever filmed for Alien never reached theaters in its original form. The death of Dallas, the Nostromo's captain, was originally shot as a far more explicit and disturbing moment. In the unused footage, Dallas is cocooned in a grotesque biological mass, barely conscious as the alien prepares him for transformation. His voice is weak, his movements sluggish, and the surrounding environment looks like a surreal organic trap. Test audiences reacted so strongly that studio executives worried the scene would overwhelm the narrative or earn censorship issues. The imagery was considered too graphic and too psychologically disturbing. As a result, the studio insisted on removing the original sequence, replacing it with a simplified off-screen implication of Dallas's fate. The full scene survived only as a deleted segment that resurfaced years later in the director's cut. Ridley Scott confirmed that the cut was not purely artistic. The studio feared the shot would shift the film from horror into territory that viewers were not prepared for. They also believed the ambiguity worked better narratively. Still, the crew and cast remembered the original cocoon sequence as one of the most shocking moments created during production. The decision to hide the footage reflected how far the filmmakers pushed boundaries. Alien walked a fine line between fear and outright grotesque imagery, and the Dallas scene was a step beyond what the producers felt comfortable revealing in 1979. The alien suit performer nearly suffocated during filming. Bolaji Badejo, the Nigerian design student chosen to play the xenomorph, endured serious physical challenges while inside the alien suit. The costume was made of latex, resin, and tubing, creating a heavy and restrictive structure. The tight headpiece allowed almost no airflow. During takes, Badejo could only breathe through a narrow opening that often became blocked by sweat or lubricant from the alien drool effect. Several crew members recalled moments when Badejo struggled to inhale. The set had to be cooled constantly, yet the interior of the suit heated rapidly under the lights. Badejo's movements had to be slow and deliberate, partly because any sudden motion risked shifting the suit in dangerous ways. He was given frequent rest breaks, but even with precautions, he sometimes emerged visibly exhausted and overheated. The production kept most of these incidents quiet to avoid negative press and to protect the film's reputation. Badejo himself described the experience as rewarding, but physically taxing in rare interviews. His unique body shape made him perfect for the creature, but that same physique made the suit even more difficult to manage, since it formed a second skin around his limbs. Despite the dangers, his performance brought an unsettling grace and realism to the creature. The fact that the suit nearly suffocated its performer only adds to its legacy as one of the most demanding monster roles in cinema history. Sigourney Weaver was not the first choice for Ripley. Although Sigourney Weaver became inseparable from the role of Ellen Ripley, she was far from the first person considered for the part. Early studio discussions leaned toward casting a more established actress. Names like Meryl Streep and even Veronica Cartwright circulated during the early stages. The studio initially hesitated to cast an unknown in the lead role of a major science fiction film. Ridley Scott, however, pushed strongly for Weaver after seeing her stage work. He believed her height, presence, and controlled intensity would bring credibility to the character. The screen tests confirmed his instincts, but the studio remained uncertain. Cartwright herself arrived at production, believing that she had been cast as Ripley, and only learned she would instead play Lambert after arriving in London. This confusion stemmed from last-minute internal decisions that the studio preferred not to publicize. They worried that revealing the early casting uncertainty would undermine confidence in the production. Weaver's unexpected selection ended up reshaping the identity of the film. Her performance transformed Ripley into a grounded, capable, and believable protagonist who broke traditional gender expectations in science fiction. Over time, Weaver's portrayal became iconic, and the early doubts faded into obscurity. Ripley is now considered one of the most influential characters in genre filmmaking, making the hidden casting confusion a fascinating footnote in cinematic history. The Nostromo was built using scraps from a real military aircraft. The Nostromo's industrial realism came from an unexpected source. To cut costs while creating a believable futuristic freighter, the production sourced discarded parts from retired military aircraft. Art directors revealed that sections of the engine room, corridors, and maintenance bays were constructed from pieces of old jet fighters, helicopter panels, and scrap metal from decommissioned aircraft facilities. These components gave the set its authentic weathered texture, something that would have been difficult and expensive to fabricate from scratch. The team combined these military parts with custom fiberglass molds to create the layered, mechanical look Ridley Scott wanted. Because the materials were cold, heavy, and often sharp-edged, the cast had to navigate the environment carefully. The studio avoided discussing the use of real military scrap because it highlighted the budget constraints behind a film marketed as a major science fiction release. This creative recycling became one of Alien's strengths. The Nostromo feels lived in, functional, and believable precisely because it was built from real-world machinery. The cat Jonesy had a secret double. Jonesy the cat provided some of Alien's most memorable moments, but the production actually used 4 trained cats. Each animal had a specific skill, from staying calm under bright lights to reacting with fear during intense scenes. One cat refused to perform on set during the sequence where the alien appears behind Ripley, so trainers brought in a calmer double that handled the tension without stress. The studio avoided publicizing the multiple cats because they preferred the illusion of a single animal performance. One trainer later explained that some cats were so anxious around the mechanical alien head that they could not be used at all. To trigger authentic fear, the crew sometimes used visual tricks, such as hiding objects the cat disliked off camera. Jonesy's dual performances helped build emotional contrast in the film. The cats balanced the tension with moments of real-life warmth, yet their behind-the-scenes swaps remained one of the production's quieter secrets. Many sounds in the film came from mating animals. The eerie, otherworldly sounds of the alien were crafted from unexpected and highly organic sources. Rather than relying solely on synthesizers, the audio team recorded and manipulated the calls of various animals during mating or aggression cycles. These included pigs, camels, and even slowed-down recordings of birds. The raw emotional intensity of these calls provided the unsettling biological realism Ridley Scott wanted. Sound designers mixed the animal recordings with metallic echoes and breathing effects to create the impression of a creature that was alive but not entirely familiar. Because some of the source material involved mating behaviors, the studio preferred to keep the details quiet. They feared that audiences would find the association humorous rather than frightening. The combination of animal biology and mechanical distortion became a defining trait of the xenomorph's presence. The sounds tap into instinctive responses, triggering unease even when the creature is not on screen. The Wayland Yutani logo hid a subtle parody. Weyland-Yutani, the shadowy corporation behind the Nostromo's mission, features a recognizable logo with a stylized W. The design seems simple, but production historians revealed that it may contain a quiet parody. The company slogan used in early drafts, "Building Better Worlds," and the geometric logo were inspired partly by real Japanese corporate branding of the 1970s. Some crew members joked that the fictional corporation was a tongue-in-cheek critique of rising global conglomerates. Art director Roger Christian stated that the graphic design team studied logos from Japanese automakers and electronics companies to create something both futuristic and ominous. While the parody is subtle, the blend of friendly branding with sinister corporate behavior became a defining trait of the Alien universe. The studio avoided emphasizing the real-world inspiration to prevent misunderstandings with international markets. Over time, the Weyland-Yutani logo became one of science fiction's most iconic corporate symbols. A real fire nearly destroyed the spaceship model. During the miniature effects shoot, the team faced a dangerous incident that the studio avoided publicizing. While filming exterior shots of the Nostromo and its landing thrusters, one of the pyrotechnic charges malfunctioned. The flames spread across the model platform, briefly igniting part of the ship's structure. Crew members rushed in with extinguishers and were able to save the miniature before the fire consumed it. The incident occurred because the team used real flame effects to achieve authentic lighting during landing sequences. The heat came dangerously close to melting the resin hull. Losing the miniature would have forced the production to rebuild the ship from scratch, causing massive delays. The near disaster was quietly resolved and the model restored. The scene was later completed successfully, but the moment remains one of the most serious technical scares of the entire production. The space jockey scene was nearly cut to save money. The space jockey sequence is one of the most haunting images in Alien, yet it almost never appeared. During pre-production, studio executives warned Ridley Scott that the massive set was too expensive. The sculpt would require weeks of labor, custom foam structures, and heavy airbrushed detailing by H.R. Geiger. With the budget already strained, the studio pushed to remove the entire scene. Scott fought back by filming a test reel that showcased the eerie scale of the derelict ship, using children in spacesuits to make the environment look enormous. The footage impressed the executives enough to keep the sequence. It became a defining moment in the film, hinting at a larger universe and deepening the mystery around the alien species. The scene's near cancellation was not revealed widely, since the studio preferred to present the production as fully planned rather than improvisational. The alien egg was originally a completely different creature. The iconic egg design did not begin as an egg at all. Early concept art by H.R. Geiger depicted a tall, tubular organism rooted to the ground, with openings lined by sharp teeth rather than petals. The creature was imagined as a standing biological trap that would react to movement. The design was visually striking, but studio executives found it too abstract and too far removed from traditional creature silhouettes. To make the concept more cinematic, Geiger redesigned it into an egg with a cross-shaped opening. The pulsing interior and organic textures remained, but the form became more recognizable and easier to integrate into the hive environment. The first version was quietly abandoned, partly to avoid confusing audiences with an overly surreal design. Only later art publications revealed the original creature form. This evolution shows how Alien's visual language balanced surreal horror with understandable shapes. Producers feared the female crew depictions would spark backlash. Alien was unusual for its time because it portrayed male and female crew members as equals, sharing responsibilities, tension, and danger without stereotypical roles. Internal studio memos from the era reveal real concern that audiences might respond negatively to this portrayal. Some executives feared pushback from regions where women were not commonly shown in authoritative or physically demanding roles. Others worried that Ripley's calm leadership and Lambert's practical competence would conflict with audience expectations shaped by decades of genre films. Ridley Scott and the writers stood firm. They argued that a future society should reflect gender balance. The studio ultimately agreed, but avoided discussing these early concerns publicly. They did not want the film framed as a political statement. Ironically, Ripley's role became a groundbreaking model for science fiction characters and remains one of the most celebrated aspects of the film. Marketing used secret audio techniques that were later restricted. Alien's original trailer used unsettling audio techniques that pushed the limits of 1970s marketing standards. Sound designers layered industrial noises, distorted animal calls, and strobing rhythms without musical structure. They manipulated the audio with rapid volume shifts to induce stress in viewers. This approach was unusual for the time and bordered on methods later limited by advertising guidelines meant to prevent sensory overload. The trailer's escalating pitch and fragmented sound design created a sense of panic without revealing plot details. Some early test audiences reported discomfort. Later regulations introduced rules about strobing sounds and excessively sharp volume spikes, making Alien's technique unlikely to be approved today. Because the marketing relied on borderline experimental audio, the studio avoided discussing its technical origins and psychological intention. The strategy worked, and the trailer became one of the most iconic in film history. Crew members hid inside the set to operate the alien. Some of the alien's most convincing movements were not created with hydraulics, but with hidden crew physically operating parts of the creature from inside the Nostromo set. During scenes where the alien tail moves independently, technicians crouched inside walls or beneath grated flooring, pulling cables and pushing rods through carefully disguised openings. The tight corridors meant they often worked in cramped and overheated conditions. Because the production wanted audiences to believe the alien was a seamless organism, these behind-the-scenes mechanics were never discussed publicly. The illusion of a fully unified creature was essential to the film's terror. Ridley Scott preferred practical movement over early animatronics, believing that unpredictable human-operated motion would produce a more disturbing effect. The hidden operators helped to create some of the creature's most memorable moments, including the sudden tail curl and the slow reach toward its victims. Alien endures because it was built from choices that pushed boundaries, strained nerves, and demanded an unusual level of creativity from everyone involved. Behind the film's quiet corridors and shadowed machinery were long nights, physical risks, and ideas that seemed too strange to reveal at the time. The production was not a smooth or polished process. It was a collision of raw imagination, practical ingenuity, and relentless ambition that produced something no one had seen before. Every hidden detail, from the creature's organic textures to the unsettling sound design, added layers of authenticity that still unsettle audiences decades later. Alien did more than redefine science fiction horror. It changed how filmmakers approached suspense, world building, and character. The secrets behind its creation remind us that groundbreaking art often emerges from the most unpredictable and unconventional decisions.